Jewish Education in Media is pleased to present L'Chaim, a program that highlights the people, issues, and events of importance to the Jewish community. Now here is your host, Rabbi Mark Golub.
I'm Mark Golub, and for all of you who care about the way Israel is perceived and understood and appreciated for the remarkably caring and compassionate society which Israel is, despite its many challenges, you know that one of the most unfair, untrue object of attacks on Israel is the suggestion that the IDF, the Israel Defense Forces, that the young men and women who serve 2 and 3 years in the Israeli army immediately upon graduating high school, that they're guilty of brutal and dehumanizing tactics in the treatment of Palestinians on the West Bank. This is a piece of today's outrageous and hideous blood libel told by the enemies of Israel and the enemies of the Jewish people in an attempt to destroy Israel, if not the Jews. If you don't remember, the blood libel was an anti-Semitic canard that said Jews actually used the blood of Christian children to make matzah on Passover. And went along with the ludicrous charge that Jews were poisoning the wells of non-Jews. It's an insult to even respond to these anti-Semitic lies. But unfortunately, tragically, there were people who believed the lies. And they went out and murdered Jews. Today's blood libel is the accusation that the Israel Defense Forces is guilty of racism and brutality. It's no more true than was the blood libel, that Jews used the blood of Christian children to make matzah. But some people believe it. They believe it on college campuses, where Jews who may have served in the IDF are the object of derision and verbal assault and outright discrimination. And most tragically, there are Jews, young and older, who believe the lies told about the IDF are true. So what does the state of Israel do? What does the IDF do? Well, one Israeli is trying to do something in response to this contemporary blood libel. He's trying to empower IDF soldiers who've completed their years of service on how to answer questions about Israel and the IDF, especially when they're on trips outside of Israel, which so many Israelis do after completing their time in the IDF. It is an honor for me to introduce to you Eyal Biram, founder and CEO of an organization called Israel Is, whose mission is to change the way Israel is perceived in the world through IDF soldiers who become ambassadors for the state of Israel. And joining Eyal on this edition of L'Chaim is a former Israeli soldier who's been part of the Israel Is program, Omer Kalo, now a captain in the IDF Active Reserve Forces and a student at the Interdisciplinary Center in Herzliya, where he's studying for his MBA. It is so lovely to have both of you here. It is an honor for me to sit with you. Eyal, Mazal Tov, Yasher Koach, and also Omer, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you very much.
So, first I want to learn something about the two of you, then I want to talk about Israel Is. So I begin with you. Who in the world are you? Where'd you grow up? And who were your parents and what kind of home did you grow up in? You were born where?
I born in a village called Ramot HaShavim next to Kfar Saba.
Yes.
I raised there as part of the youth movement. It's called the Agriculture Union. And I served in the army for 6 years in a unit called Sayeret Matkal, one of the elite forces of the IDF.
That's a real honor to be in that unit. Mazal tov to you. Do you have brothers and sisters?
Yeah, yeah.
What do you have?
Brothers, we are 5 in my
There
family.
are 5 of you.
Yeah,
Where are you in the 5?
I'm the second.
You're the second.
Yeah. All of my brothers are officers in the IDF.
Are you 5 boys?
We are 4 boys
4 boys and a girl.
and a girl, yeah.
Where's the girl in the order?
She's the youngest one.
The youngest.
Yeah,
Wow. Where is she right now?
She will join the army in a few years also.
Very nice. What were your parents' names? What are your parents' names?
Roni and Tamar,
Roni and Tamar.
yeah.
And in terms of how they looked at Jewish and Israel, to what extent were you brought up in a home in which there was Judaism at all? Did you have Shabbat at home? What was a Seder like? What kind of Jewishness did you have growing up?
So actually we are a combination family. My father is Orthodox and my mother she's not. And that's a combination to live in a family that it's very Jewish to have 2 people with 3 opinions.
Yeah.
That usually happen.
How was that for you?
It was very good. I believe it's the best thing for a kid to raise in a family, that there is values to love Israel, to be Jewish, but to find your way of doing it.
Did they give you a Jewish education as a young person, as a child?
Yes, in the elementary school,
Yes.
and the schools in Israel, of course.
Did you have a
yeah.
bar mitzvah ceremony?
Of course, I did. I did a good job also.
I'm sure you
I
did.
was considered to be the next rabbi, but
And instead you went in a different direction.
I was very modest. I decided not to take it, yeah.
You don't by any chance remember your parasha, your sedra, do you?
Of course, I was Parashat Vayeshev.
I'm very impressed, Eyal. Very impressed. And did you do both Torah and Haftarah?
No, just Haftarah.
Just Haftarah. You go to school, and then you graduate high school.
Graduate high school, I did a year of service in the Jordan Valley, in
Yes.
a
What
village
did you
called
do?
Tomer. I was educating kids in the youth movement.
Why did you do that? What motivated you?
I believe an 18-year-old guy before he joined for the army, and he wants to do an important service and to do a significant contribution for the country, should be more prepared and should be more mature before he get for that point. And I decided that I want to volunteer before, and I found that the program of volunteering in the youth movement that I believe is doing incredible job all over the country, and especially in the Jordan Valley, was very important with the kids in that area.
Who did you work with? Who were the kids?
It was kids from all the villages around the Jordan Valley. There's a few dozens of villages there, and part of the problem there is that there is kids that raising up in the village that there is just a few kids, and can be one in the 1st grade, one in the 4th grade, and one in the 12th grade. So you should create combination and social life for these kids.
Are you dealing with Jews?
Yes, just with Jewish villages. Yeah.
Okay. How did your parents feel about you doing this?
They were very proud.
Okay, good for them. And you're working in the Jordan Valley, right? So You're working on the West Bank, Judea, Samaria?
Yeah.
Okay. How do your parents feel about the entire settlement movement in Israel?
About the situation,
Settlements.
the political
Yeah.
engagement in
In
Israel.
other words, there are some parents who might say to their son, I don't want you being on the West Bank. I don't want you in communities on the West Bank. Do it inside Israel sometime. So I'm asking you, did your parents have any feelings here?
Actually, they were very supporting it because Israel as a country, regardless who was the prime minister at that time, and it was a combination between the right and the left in Israel, sent people to live there.
Yes.
And these kids needs to have an education. So that was the very important mission, that regardless what is the discussion about Judea and Samaria, there will still be an existence of a good education for these kids who live there. That's part of their life.
That's very lovely. Okay, so you complete that 1 year.
Yes.
And then how do you get into the unit?
I did.
Did you choose it, or did they choose you?
That was a long few years of selection process. In the end, I found myself there starting. It was a bit less than 2 years of training.
Yes.
And afterwards, I did 4 years of service. I also been an officer there.
You were an officer?
Yeah.
Okay. Kol hakavod to you. You were in there 4 years? You served 4 years?
Yes.
4 years.
I served 6 years.
6 years. 2 years of training,
yeah.
and 4 years.
Yeah.
Okay. Those 4 years end how many years ago?
I finished it 2.5 years ago.
Okay. And then how do you think of creating Israel Is? How does the idea come to you?
2016, I was selected to join for the Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, for a trip. It was a delegation to Entebbe, Uganda. It was 40 years anniversary for Entebbe operation. And when I selected to join this delegation, it was a few months after I was the honored officer for Yom Ha'atzmaut for my unit.
You were?
Yeah.
Kol hakavod again. That's lovely.
Thank you very much. And the reason I thought about Israel is because a few months before that, I just took a vacation from the army. And I did what a regular young Israeli do when they finish the army, but I was still an officer, so I just traveled for a few months afterwards. And I traveled for a few months while I was an officer. And when I came back, I had an idea, and I thought that that's a very simple way of creating an ambassadors of Israel, just by using the existing power of soldiers going after the army. And then I was selected to join for the Prime Minister for the trip. And I thought that that's an opportunity to share my experience as a backpacker who was traveling there, but also as an officer that sees the potential that the army can do in a very small efforts to create a huge impact. And that's what I did. I created the presentation and called it From Soldiers to Ambassadors. And when the airplane departed from Ben Gurion Airport, and until we landed in Entebbe, Uganda, we had the permission for the generals of the IDF to start doing it. And that was just the beginning of the journey.
You convinced the generals?
I showed them the problem. And
Define the problem.
Yeah.
What's the problem?
The problem. An average young Israeli finished the army traveling abroad. And we are speaking for more than 80% of these soldiers going to travel, at least for 3 months. And then they're going to meet with each one of them with dozens of international travelers, mostly coming from the US and Europe. And these travelers that they're meeting, most of them been in university and traveling in the same ages, but just in that destination. And when they are meeting the Israelis, they are getting for the first time meeting with someone who's been in the army. And as in this conversation, usually the problem that they are getting and starting to be asked about Israel and about the military service. And we find that most of them don't know, and I felt it on myself. I felt that I was disappointed for myself as someone who was the officer and I served in the army, but I still didn't know how to react and how to answer these questions. And I find that the best way of doing it is sharing a personal story. And we just need to use the huge power that already going abroad, empowering them before they leave the country, and give them the right opportunities of doing it when they are spreading all over the world and meeting with the young millennials. So when the airplane landed in Entebbe, we had the permission of starting building this project.
You mean during the flight you convinced?
During the flight, I briefed each one of the commanders why it's so important and significant.
And they agreed with you?
And they agreed, yeah.
Very good. You must have been very persuasive. I wish I was on that trip with you. Very, very nice. But what was it like to go to Entebbe for this anniversary?
That was a very meaningful trip for me as an officer that usually, before I start my service and during Mivtza Yonatan, Operation Jonathan,
yes.
Yonatan Netanyahu, the Prime Minister brother, who was killed as part of this operation.
And the only one.
And the only one who was killed. That was the commander of Sayeret Matkal at that time. Was assigned for us for Zionism, for keeping and surviving Jews around the world, regardless if they have an Israeli passport or not. And that was part of his mission. So that was a sign, and that was an important trip for me to see it and understand the huge difference. And even today, to send soldiers 4,000 kilometers for the other side of the world with the best GPS system, that would be a very hard decision for the Prime Minister. But doing it in 1976 was even harder when they even had the right machines to travel there. It was a luck, and it was a great team and staff that make sure that these people and the people who were hijacked it will be back in Israel safe.
It was an amazing operation. I remember it vividly. It came out on Independence Day for America. 76, right?
Yes.
Lo and behold, Israel flies a world away to save Jews at an airport in Africa. Just amazing. And then, of course, we learned the tragedy of Yonatan. And I don't know if you know, have you ever seen his book of letters?
Of course.
It's just marvelous. He's a marvelous person. That's a wonderful story. Stay there for 1 minute. So, Omer, you've heard the story Eyal tells. I want to know how you end up with this. First of all, where are you born and where do you grow up?
So I grew up in a small city. It used to be small, now it's a little bit bigger, and it's called Nes Tziona, which is 15, 20 minutes south of Tel Aviv. Grew up in a very advocated family, very big advocate of Israel. Both of my parents were officers, served in the First Lebanese War. So the army thing and serving in a meaningful position was, I think, that defined our education, mine and my sister's.
Two of you.
Two of us.
Uh-huh. And I ask you the same question. What about the Jewishness of your home?
So,
and the reason I ask, that I meet many Israelis, your age and older, and they have a very strong sense of connection and Jewish identity in a broad sense. Some of them, by the way, have just grown up in secular homes and do not have a real sense of Judaism. It's different for an American Jew than it is for an Israeli Jew. And then many times an Israeli will say to me, I live in Israel, and everything about my life everything is Jewish around me. So that for me, they will say to me, Judaism was less important than it might be for you. Then I meet Israelis who have parents, so Eyal's father was Orthodox, and he has a bar mitzvah, and he remembers his haftarah. So the question is, in that context, what kind of home did you grow up in?
So I grew up in a secular house.
Yes.
I won't remember my haftarah.
Was there a bar mitzvah ceremony?
Of course. I did all the ceremonies, and we celebrate all the holidays. I think that Judaism as the Masoret of reciting the psukim and going to the synagogue and having kiddush every Friday night, those things were a little bit less happening in our house. But the other parts of the tradition, celebrating all the holidays, was a very big and an important thing in our life.
Seder?
Seder, of course. And we celebrated all the holidays.
Sukkot?
Of course.
You understand, by the way, in America, many American Jews do not celebrate Sukkot.
They
will go to a synagogue where there's a sukkah. They won't build a sukkah in their home. Did your family actually build a sukkah for yourself?
Sometimes we did. When we were younger, we used to build a sukkah in our house.
And that's lovely. And I'm sure it has lovely memories. Okay, so you're in high school, then you finish high school, and what's your experience with the IDF?
So I enlisted, first of all, I did the first part of my service in the Israeli Navy SEALs, and I decided to move to another unit, and I did the rest of my service, 5 years of service in EGOZ, which is one of the IDF special forces, the infantry special forces. Served there as a team commander, finished after 5 years of service, and then I decided that it's time to spread my wings and fly away to the big trip I dreamed of.
Okay, we'll come to that in a minute. Sort of the same question I asked Eyal. Did you see action?
While I was serving?
Yes.
Of course. And,
oh, wait, you say of course. It could have been that you didn't, yes? But you did. Okay. And without telling me what the operations were, can you tell me where?
We did some activity in Judea and Samaria in the West Bank. I participated in Protective Edge in a way.
In Gaza? In a way?
In a way, yeah.
Okay. Not necessarily on the ground?
No, on the ground, but my unit actually took some casualties even before getting into Gaza.
I'm sorry.
So we had to take care of our casualties before getting in.
But you were actually in Gaza at one point?
No.
But your unit was? Okay. Well, you were not in Gaza.
I've been.
During a war?
Yes.
Which one?
Protective Age, the operation in 2014.
By the way, when we looked at it from America, that looked horrible for you guys. Was it horrible?
What do you mean horrible?
What do I mean horrible? It's a very good question. What do I mean by horrible? Obviously, we don't want any of our children, and you're part of our children. We don't want any of our children in battle. Okay, so anytime you have to go into battle anywhere, we don't like it. You don't like it, we don't like it. Your parents don't like it, your grandparents don't. Nobody likes it. But there seemed to be in Gaza a different kind of brutality. It was a street war. It was house to house sometimes. And as a result, that seemed to be harder on the Israeli soldier, especially when we hear about how the Israeli army tried to be as humane as it could be. So it's in that sense, it looked horrible to me. Is that fair?
No, it's not fair.
It wasn't horrible.
It wasn't like,
It was. We imagined it worse for you than it may have been.
it wasn't easy. On one of the days during the war, I opened my telephone and I saw that one of my friends killed part of the operation. And at that moment, that changed for me from being just a day in the army, that we were shooting and training and doing our mission. And that was fine. I did it with my friends. That was my life at that time. But at that specific moment, I understood that we, as a country, we need to pay a very hard life of our kids
Yes.
to keep Israel strong. And at that specific moment, I understood that this is not a game, that's a real war.
Yes.
And no, I don't like war, and I believe that we should do our best not to get inside. But it wasn't horrible because we had our faith and we believed that we are doing the right thing there. So regardless all the casualties we had, and unfortunately we had a lot, we still were believing that we are doing the right thing, and we understood that we are protecting Israel, and we did it with the human that the IDF is doing. It's part of every mission they do, and I saw it during my 6 years of service, and I believe all of my heart that the IDF is really the most honorable army in the world.
Yes, and of all the things I want to talk to you about, and we'll get to it in just a minute, that's what I want to hear most from you. Do you agree with Eyal if you would not use the word horrible?
Horrible is not the word I would use. I think it's more challenging than the rest of the operations and wars we had in our generation or the closer generation to us. Fighting in a mixed population environment such as Gaza or the West Bank raises much more conflicts, moral conflicts than the rest of the arenas, like Lebanon, for example, or Egypt fighting in the Sinai Desert. Because you actually see people in their houses fighting a war that they think that is just. You're not fighting soldiers, you're not fighting an army, you're fighting people. And for young kids, and I'm allowing myself to call those commanders young kids. I was a young kid serving in the army as a commander. Those young kids to make these moral decisions while taking care of their soldiers and leading them through battle, that could be way much more challenging, I believe, than the rest of the arenas we fought in. But that's my personal perspective.
Omer, you said both of your parents served in the IDF. What'd your mother do?
My mother was a clerk handling all the human resources part of the unit.
What's her name?
Lior.
And your father, what did he do?
He was the technological officer of the unit.
Okay. What did he do?
He served.
I'm sorry, what was his name?
Ari.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay. And so in some way you're following in their footsteps. When I talk to Israeli parents and grandparents, what they always say to me is they hope that by the time their children or grandchildren graduate high school, they won't have to serve in battle in the IDF. And that's some say the messianic wish of the Israeli. Do you think that's a fair description? Do you think that this is something that is almost universal in Israel? That parents and grandparents hope the next generation will not have to do what you did?
I think that I agree with that perspective. We don't want the war and the conflict to keep on happening to us. I think the situation that we live in Israel is very challenging. It's not simple at all. We see it as our reality. We rationalize our reality. We rationalize the thing that is happening to us every day. Hitting with missiles, and you have stabbing people with knives trying to kill soldiers in the checkpoints and in the barriers. That's something that for any other human being that is living in the rest of the world, taking out all the places that war is happening right now in like Syria or other countries, that would be ludicrous to live in this kind of reality. For us, it became something that is very rational. I think that Eyal and I both would agree that we hope that the future will be brighter for our kids.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, absolutely.
So you've complete
5 years.
Incidentally, both of you, you could have gone in for 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
Both of you went in longer. Why?
We want to contribute for the country.
The job wasn't done yet.
Okay. Kol hakavod to both of you. So now you're done. How do you end up in Israel and you take a group to Peru?
Mm-hmm.
How does it? And people should understand. And you both described it now. Kids get out of these young men and women get out of the IDF, and very often there is a tradition now that you say, I want to spread my wings, I want to see the world, and it's something that Israeli young people do very differently than Americans. There's no comparison. And you have a video, very short video, that just gives people a sense of what this is like and what you're trying to do. I want to show that video, all right?
Okay, sure.
Each year, over 547,000 young Israelis between ages 20 to 24 travel overseas. Most of them are recently released soldiers. Approximately 50,000 soldiers per year are released from the army and go through seminars preparing them for their release. Now, if we think about that for a moment, essentially, each one of them is an ambassador for Israel. With their help, we can succeed in sharing the real Israel with the world. But how? Israel is a grassroots, apolitical initiative whose purpose is to help transform Israel's image in the world through Israeli travelers. And how does it work? The initiative works through 2 channels. A training workshop, which meets all Israeli soldiers before their release and provides them with basic tools for speaking about Israel. A digital community, which will accompany travelers while abroad. Within a decade, 500,000 Israelis will have gone through our workshops. The big trip, an even bigger opportunity for change.
So how do you end up on one of those trips leading a group to Peru?
So after my military service was done, I decided that I'm going to travel for a year-long trip. And when I got back, after meeting hundreds of people and talking with them about Israel, talking about my reality, I got a hunch, I got a feeling that the impact that I had the opportunity to do wasn't done. I worked for a year in education, training kids from high-risk populations for their army service. And when I finished this position, I felt that I need more meaning to the things that I do. I looked for a position that had something to do with Israel's image. And I heard about Israelis project from a very good friend, a mutual friend of ours. And I asked him to contact us, to connect with us. And as Eyal is working crazy hours, he picked up the phone at 11 in the night, telling me, hey, I've heard you're a good guy, want to join us? And I said, great. This guy is calling me at 11 in the night, must be a good guy. Yeah. So I started volunteering in the organization, joining the bigger part of the organization, working with soldiers that are just about getting out of the army and are about to take their big trips. And the opportunity of flying to Peru came up. And I thought that would be a great opportunity to complete the journey I did as when I got out of the army and make a bigger impact with my experience, with my opinions, with my perspective of the Israeli reality. And Peru is an amazing country for a backpacker. And getting back there was a dream that came true. And all of my friends were so jealous of me
Yes.
being able to fly back there. My girlfriend joined me in this effort, in this endeavor, and that made this trip even more special.
Of course, that's wonderful. What's her name?
Eden.
And did she serve in the IDF?
She was an officer for almost 6 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, what is the message that you hope Israel gets out when you guys go on? You have people. You have now these young ambassadors, is what you call them. They've served in the IDF. They have experience. I assume, by the way, you are careful with whom you about the people that you include in this, correct? And then you take time to prepare them. There's some kind of teaching of what you say and how do you respond when people accuse, et cetera, et cetera. But who are these people that you have tried to bring into the program of Israel is?
So Israel it's a non-profit that it's an apolitical, and that's very important. We are collaborating with the IDF, training the soldiers in the last period of service in a training program before they leave the country. And we are also doing the field embassies. The project spread in 8 different locations. That's an international hub that people can meet and talk and share a personal story and connect. That was what the mission that Omer did in Peru. And as part of the training program, we created a pyramid that starts with every soldier after the army. We have more than 35,000 soldiers who did it in the last 2 years.
Really?
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
35,000.
35,000 soldiers who've been trained in the last 2 years. And that's part of 3 steps of training that takes everyone and bring them the understanding that they have a soldier who left the army have responsibility for Israel by being an ambassador of Israel. And that will influence Israel and the Jewish people around the world. And that's the first, and that's the beginning of what we're doing just in that training for a few hours for every soldier. But from that, we are taking them for an advanced training, for taking the people who are more interested, and that's more than 50% of them signing up for this training, to build a personal story. That's how we called it, because you've got a personal story. And you need to know how to deliver it abroad, by your story, with your messages. But you understand that this is part of the global situation that creates Israel to be stronger. We believe in diversity, and we believe that it should be connected for everyone. And that's part of the Israeli society and story, the diversity of it. And the third step of it is taking the most articulate one, the most talented one with a better English and motivation. And that's the one that Omer were managing in Peru, and this part in Argentina, and in Guatemala, and in Mexico, and in Brazil, and in Thailand, and India, and over location that this activity is going. So this is just part of it. But when a soldier getting inside, we want him to understand that what's the difference between how he sees Israel by his side and what's happening around the world, what's the misconception.
And how they see it.
And we want him to understand that the basic way to create a connection is to know how to listen for the other side, and that's very problematic for Israelis. And afterwards, that they should know, they should learn, because when they are an ambassador, they're an ambassador of a message. The ambassador of Israel, Israel has a lot of messages inside. It can be Israel and history, Israel and technology, Israel and Judaism, and Israel and the army. It can be everything that's connected to Israel, but they need to know, and that's the third important thing that every soldier has to know when they leave the country, and they getting this training before that.
Eyal, that sounds like a lot for an individual to learn. How long a program of study, or how long is the training for this?
From a few hours for every soldier in the army to a week afterwards for the more talented one.
I'm sorry, it's a few hours.
For every soldier who finished the army. In a few steps, and the last step is a week, the training.
A week?
Yeah.
How long was your training?
A week.
1 week?
1 week. I joined the last part of the training when we already got the best ones of the soldiers that went through the basic training.
Okay. And when you say a week, how many hours a week? How many hours a day during that week?
That's a full week, working together from the morning from dusk till dawn.
Okay.
We call it in the army from sunrise till sunrise.
Yeah.
From sunrise to
Do you feel that you are conversant with and knowledgeable about all the areas that Eyal just listed? It's one thing if somebody says to you, I want you to go out, and if you're talking about the IDF, you really can talk about it from inside and give a perspective that most people don't have.
Mhm.
But Eyal just listed, he wants you to know the history of Israel, he wants you to know culture of Israel, he wants you to know Judaism. You said all these things.
Yeah, that's the stories of Israel. Israel built from
Yes.
a lot of stories.
So Omer goes out as an ambassador.
Yeah.
He doesn't know who he's going to run into
Mm-hmm.
on the hills of Peru or anywhere,
Mhm.
right? You could run into somebody in Times Square when you leave here, all right? You could be in a restaurant in New York or a restaurant in England, London, anywhere, and somebody finds out you were a major officer in the IDF, they could have 1,000 questions for you. Or they find out you're Israeli, and they have 1,000 questions for you. Do you feel you would be comfortable in the span of topics that Eyal just mentioned?
I think that I would be comfortable. Yeah, I have the experience of traveling for a long time. This is why the directors of the delegations are people that already did the long trip, and because you already face the challenge of being challenged by the people with all the questions regarding many topics, many subjects, the whole span of the topics that you mentioned.
Would you also feel comfortable?
Yes, absolutely. I think this is part of the story, and I think the reasons of it, and that's the impact we have of the Israelis, that they need to understand that as part of being an ambassador, you need to understand your story. And that's an important part, what we are doing and believing that it's part of our mission.
Mm-hmm.
Not just spreading their stories abroad, but also understand, first of all, what is my story. And I will just mention that the reason why we picked up this specific location that I mentioned in East Asia and South America and Australia, that it's not just Israelis who are going there, it's also the international one. And we found that these young guys and girls that are meeting, the young millennials, and that's so important to connect them because they are coming back for the countries, and Omer actually have a very interesting story about it. Part of them can be journalists, can be lawyers, can be businessmen, but we also found that in the past, Barack Obama, Steve Jobs, Justin Trudeau, Prince Harry, Prince William, all of them being backpacking. And we can just imagine what would be the impact if Barack Obama would travel with one of our ambassadors for a week. And that's why we're believing so much in this platform, that this is a strategic way, and that's a new way of using the huge power of already ambassadors going abroad, giving them the right skills and opportunities to being ambassadors. And I want to ask Omer to share his story from Peru that you will find very interesting.
Okay, so our story begins with actually with the first day in the job. So the reason why we're going abroad is in order to create social events where the Israeli travelers, the Israeli backpackers that are already there, could share their stories, their insights, their perspective with the other international backpackers. Could be the simpler one, could be the ones that are going to lead the world sometime soon. In order to bring those international backpackers to those social events, we leave the hostel that we're staying in very early in the morning, and we start talking with people in the street, in the main parts of the city. So we made a big sign saying, free coffee for a conversation, with a little Arab coffee pot that we drew on this sign. And we sat in one of the main squares of Cusco, the city that we were stationed in. 10, 15 minutes later, a group of people that were very curious about the little Arab coffee pot came over and asked us why did we drew this painting. And we told them, this is our kind of coffee pot. And they told us, no, this is our kind of coffee pot. We told them, wait, what do you mean? They told us, we're from Egypt, Syria, Lebanon, Jordan, and from Palestine. And this is an Arab coffee pot. We started arguing about what's theirs and what's ours, and that's the normal conflict between Muslim and Jewish people, especially the one from Israel and the countries that surround it. We invited them over to sit with us, drank some coffee, and questions started to be brought up. And what we discovered through this encounter, this crazy encounter, that was the first day of our job, We prepared ourselves through the training of Israelis for the knowledgeable French girl or for the advocated Dutch guy that watches the international media every day. But we didn't prepare ourselves for this extreme social situation. So what we learned about from this situation was that they are dealing with a very big struggle of their own. We learned about their side of the conflict, their pain. And they learned about us. One of the surreal experiences that we had there was hearing about one of the guys' grandfather that fought in the Yom Kippur War for the Egyptian side and died. For them, he's a war hero. For us, he isn't. He's the other side. He's the one that we needed to win, to overcome. For us, it's a story of triumph. For them, it's a big loss. And in spite of these tough stories that we heard from them and they heard from us, something was different about this encounter. It was different than the usual encounter between Palestinians and Israelis or a Muslim guy and a Jewish guy. The thing that was different was both sides understand that this is a meeting between the new generations of the countries. And the new generation is tired from the conflict, from the quarrel, from the struggle. And both sides yearn for peace. And a real sensation of hope came up while we kept on talking for almost 2 hours. In the end of these 2 hours, we invited them over to one of our social events that took place in the night. And we made a big shakshuka contest, which is an Israeli, we say it's Israeli cuisine. They say that it's their cuisine. And then we're going back to the conflict. Very special event because regardless of all the international backpackers that were there, we had Arab Muslim people and Israeli people dancing together. Israeli music is played in the back. Everybody's hugging, kissing, laughing together. And to think that this group of people, both sides, saw the other side as their worst enemies up until 5 hours before is incredible. And this is the impact of Israelis. But other than that, I think that laying down the arms for one evening is something that is feasible, is conceivable. People could do that, leave their prejudice aside and enjoy one another for one night. What was amazing about the impact of Israelis came after 2 weeks when we continued our traveling, my girlfriend and I, and we got a message through Instagram from Muhammad, the Egyptian guy that were on the group of Muslim people. He sent us a footage of a Muslim woman that got shot and killed in one of the Israeli checkpoints in the West Bank. And that was very troublesome because we expected accusation. We expected a situation where we need to explain actions of other people that were not directly related to. Soldiers could make mistakes. But when we tried to understand what really happened there, we found out that this woman actually was killed because she tried to stab a soldier before, but he didn't see that. So what was surprising was he didn't send us a message with accusations. He sent us a message that said, after meeting you guys, I understand now that there are two sides to each story. And I know my side of the story. I know the side that says Israeli soldier killed a woman in the checkpoint for no reason. But I believe that if I would hear your side, I would learn that there is more to know about this situation. And that's incredible. That's incredible. We sent him the video, the full video, that was deliberately edited by the international media and was shown on this full version in our media, and he was shocked. He told us, I had no idea how biased my media is. And I was lucky enough to meet you guys to understand that there is actually hope and truth in whatever you guys are doing and the collaboration we could make with the new generation in the country. And Eyal is talking about an organization that is sent abroad in order to tell our personal story, because a lot of times the international black person won't hear it. What I've learned from this experience is that Israel is more of an opportunity to tell a new story, a story that we are creating together with the other side, specifically with the side that don't want any connection with us. And I was really privileged to see that impact so quickly, and to understand how important the work that Israel is and us and we did throughout this experience in Peru.
That is a fabulous story. Both of you ended up in Gaza. Both of you served as officers, and unfortunately you had to see action.
Mm-hmm.
Do you hate Palestinians?
No?
Do you hate Palestinians?
No?
Do your parents hate Palestinians?
No, I think no one who understands the situation hates. We are protecting our people.
But you don't hate them.
No?
Do your parents hate?
No.
That's the main problem we have in our region.
Explain what you mean. You're absolutely right, but explain that.
I think the reason why Omer could not say the full name of Muhammad, Muhammad is afraid that he will, or his family will be killed because he met an Israeli. The problem that we are standing today in front of a media, the Arab media, that is that have an incitement against the IDF and against the country of Israel. And I'm very proud as an Israeli that in the last decade we saw a huge and tremendous change by the way that the modern Arab countries in the Middle East are treating to Israel. But they are still, and I'm speaking about Saudi Arabia, about Egypt, about Jordan.
Some of the Emirates.
Yeah, the Emirates, they still have a problem to do it formally, and that's a problem. They can inside create an incitement in their media, and outside can be a friend of Israel, informal. And that's the problem, that we are still standing today, and the countries are against Israel, and the public there, not informed of what's really happening in Israel.
And what are the Palestinian people being incited to feel about you?
The problem, and that's the main problem that we are standing today, and it's everything about education. That the education in the Palestinian Authority is to hate and
that's the problem.
To hate the
that's
Jews
the human
and
tragedy.
The soldiers, and to be shahid. To be shahid, we are not sending each one of our soldiers
Suicide
to be died.
bombers, right?
Yeah, so or to die for the country.
Yes.
For the existence of the Palestinian
By the
Authority.
way, but you join the IDF. You're ready to die for the country. What's the difference?
The difference that we as a Jewish people and as in Israel as a country believe in life. And that's why we are taking care of each one of our soldiers. That's why when the soldier that's been killed, we are doing our best to prevent it. But if that's necessary, we will do it, and we will make sure to win.
Are you
but
satisfied with that answer?
Yeah, I think that it speaks the honest truth.
So are you telling me that Palestinians don't try to save the lives of their comrades?
Well, I won't go into what the definition of shaheed and what the Quran says, because I'm not knowledgeable enough to get into this depth of understanding. But what I think is that the big cities now, the big Palestinian cities are now going through a very important change. People are now starting to believe that there's another way. And what I believe in is that we're not far from a point that a brave leadership will step up and decide that enough is enough.
I hope you're right.
I hope you're right.
We also
Yes, we absolutely. Yes. I feel so terrible for you because I speak to Israeli after Israeli, especially your age or older, and I say, do you hate Palestinians? They look at me like the question is crazy. But I know what you're describing is true, that sadly, tragically, there's a society that we are dealing with that we would be happy to have the kind of interchange you experienced on that trip with a whole group of Arab Muslims who then feel that they have a whole new perspective. But the problem is they are taught to hate you. And they're taught that you are the devil. And as a result, it's very hard. I wish that there were Palestinians who would say, no, I'm happy, I would love to live with Omer and Eyal and his parents.
There are people that, this is the main society. It's still the problem that the leaders are not the people.
It's the extreme minority.
Yeah.
Actually, few months ago, when the Trump peace plan was presented, some brave, let's say brave, maybe a little bit provocative journalists, Israeli journalists, went to the Israeli Arab villages in the region that is called the Triangle, that is supposed to be sent back to the Palestinian Authority as the part of the new land division. And they asked them, are you willing to go back to the Palestinian Authority? And they started laughing, and they said, never in their lives. So what I think is that if you detach the people from their surroundings and you let them see the bigger picture, I think they gain very important knowledge and information about reality. And this is actually the tool that we're using in Israelis. If we didn't detach the Israeli group and the Muslim group from their home countries, from their prejudice, from their close friends and their social bindings, we wouldn't be able to create this kind of conversation. And this is what's truly genius about Israelis, the simplicity. When you're flying out of your country and you're meeting someone outside of his own country as well, you are ready to start talking between you guys and understand each other's beliefs and perspective. It's much more easier to do it if I would do it in Egypt with him, or he would do it in Israel with me. You are abided to your social expectations when you are sitting in your home country. Outside of it, you're ready to hear new things.
I'm asking both of you, each of you can answer. What are the things that are said about the IDF that hurts your heart, that you say to yourself, how could anybody think of that about the IDF? And yet I hear it all the time. And, you know, I did, when I was introducing the program, I gave examples. But in real life, what have you heard, either of you? What criticisms have you heard about how the IDF operates that hurts your heart?
We see it right now in the ICC court. We don't need to say any more words, but
you should explain it for people who don't understand.
The ICC,
International Criminal Court.
Is the International Criminal Court.
And they're blaming the IDF for what?
They are blaming the IDF for doing war crimes.
Yes.
And I believe the IDF is absolutely not perfect, and that's very challenging to do our mission and to keep the civilians of the other side when there is a terrorist group inside them. But still then, the morality of the IDF and the briefing that we are doing for any success or failure is part of looking that we understand that we have a responsibility not just for ourselves, but also responsibility for the message and for the way Israel as a country is presented inside it. I'm just speaking between the commander and his kid at home, that he wants to feel that he is doing the right mission. And he believes in truth, full of his heart, that he's doing it.
Are Israelis mean? Are Israeli soldiers mean to Palestinians at checkpoints?
What do you mean?
I don't have to explain it to you. Unless you don't know the word mean.
Do you want me to answer?
Yeah, answer, please.
if I can relate to the former question that you asked, I would say that the thing that annoys me the most and hurts my feeling the most, it's when they say that the soldiers are brutal and immoral. They have a lack of morality. And it takes me back to 2015, I think, when this young soldier shot the terrorist on the ground. And this thing went crazy, went super viral in all of the international media. And it became the only appearance of how the IDF is perceived in the eyes of the world. And for each soldier that does the wrong thing, there are 1,000 soldiers that do the right thing each and every day. And I, as a commander, educated my soldiers each and every day to do the right thing, to act with common sense, with morality, with a sense of emotions towards the people they are obligated to work with the Palestinian population, with a mixed population. And it crazes me when I see people that are saying things, such false accusations towards representatives of Israel, towards soldiers of Israel, blaming them for killing children, blaming them for killing women and children in the checkpoints, with no knowledge at all of how things really are in the West Bank and in Gaza.
People say that, again, so much attention is paid to these checkpoint business. And look, the IDF is in total control of the checkpoints. Mm-hmm. By and large, and when you say, it's not that the Israeli army isn't perfect, human beings aren't perfect. Nobody's perfect. Mm-hmm. That's not the standard. The standard is the Israeli army, is the IDF, doing its level best to be as compassionate and moral as possible while protecting itself, its soldiers, and the Israeli public. And the minute you have to protect the public, there are times when you have to use force for that protection. And that's just the reality. The question is, does the Israeli army ever use force because it can? Not because it should, but because it's in control. So people say, the Israelis at checkpoints will make Palestinians wait in the sun for hours and hours and hours, for no reason at all. And they'll go into homes, even into Arab cities and Palestinian cities, and Israel retains the right for when they think there is going to be a terrorist operation to go into any Arab village or any Arab city, including Ramallah and now anywhere, in the middle of the night, and pull somebody out of bed. And so what we hear is, look at those Israelis. It's not simply the craziness that Israelis are shooting children on the Gaza border, which we heard, right? You're shooting at doctors and women and children. Your snipers are shooting at children, doctors, and women on the Gaza border. But you're not only doing that, you are creating an atmosphere of the boot of the Israeli army is on the neck of the poor Palestinian. That's the charge. And I referred to what happens on college campuses. On college campuses, there are people who are saying this about the IDF all the time. And anybody who serves in the IDF, by virtue of serving, you're immoral. You're immoral for serving in that IDF. And as a result, on a college campus, you who once were serving in the IDF, you can't run for student government. Mm-hmm. How could somebody at our university run for student government after serving in this immoral IDF? And I weep for you guys because, again, when people believe it, it doesn't matter if it's true or not true. If people believe it, it's very hard to defend yourself. And if when you're put in the position of having to defend yourself, you're already at a disadvantage. So in my mind, one of the things that you're trying to do, Eyal, is send out these ambassadors who can not only project a different image and who have the ability to create the kind of interchange and the kind of social interaction that ultimately leads somebody to saying, you know, I can't believe my video is right. And then you send him a corrected video, and he says, in essence, I knew you were right, and thank you for sending me this video. But when you meet somebody who says to you guys, how can you be in the IDF? You were shooting children at the Gaza border. How can you be in the IDF? You go into people's homes like Nazis did in Germany and pull them out of beds. A, how does it make you feel, and what do you want to say when somebody charges that?
Do you want to answer?
Please answer.
Well, I tell them that there are two sides to each story. That's the starting point of everything. And you asked us if we hate Palestinians, and I wanted to tell you that people that are saying that they hate Palestinians are running away from the truth, from the full truth, from reality. And people that would say those kind of things, in my mind, are also running away from actually understanding the full picture. They read something about Israel, they saw some footage in the media and decided that this is reality. And I immediately invite them over to Israel. You want to see apartheid, so-called? You want to see people that are living under my boot? Come over to Israel. And I'll take you to the West Bank. I'll take you to the West Bank, we'll travel in my car, and you'll see the ferocious boot of Israel on the neck of the Palestinian people. Palestinian people are actually working in Israeli settlements. That's the truth. They're working and getting paid for working in Israeli settlements. And Palestinian people are looking for ways to come over to Israel and live in a modern and Western society where they can get rights, they can get education, they can get health system that they don't have under their Palestinian Authority. And reality is that we're bound in this moment to live next to one another. And while you have people that are trying to live in peace next to one another, like the Palestinians that I mentioned that are working in Israeli settlements, you have people that are trying to break the peace through those actions. And the military that is stationed in the West Bank and trying to maintain peace sometimes will have to act with force, with moderate force, in order to keep the peace on happening. And another thing I wanted to say is that we can't say that the IDF as a whole works perfectly. But what we can say as officers that educated the next generation of soldiers that were under our command, we worked day and night to make them work in a way that they won't do only the right professional thing of using their gun the fastest way or running the fastest way or navigating. It's also doing the right thing when it comes to the moral thing. That's a very big aspect of the standard Israeli soldier training. Working under a very big and demanding moral compass. And this is something that people that are foreigners to the culture of the IDF are not understanding, do not understand at all. And one visit to a boot camp base or to a company or platoon that is working either in the West Bank or either training somewhere in Israel would make people understand that the thing that they watch in TV are very biased.
There are some who say that there's a Israeli settler mentality, and that there is inside the settler mentality, there is a hatred, and that although you don't hate, some people are critical of the right-wing settler movement because they feel they are the equivalent of the Palestinians who do not want to live with you. What do you say?
That's a tough question. Well, I have many friends that are currently living in the West Bank. There are people that want to live in peace with their neighbors, and there are people that don't like to live next to them. The people that don't like to live next to them are people that were a victim. They were a victim of the conflict. When you see your best friend, like one of my best friends that lives in the West Bank, the rabbi of the settlement got shot from a driving car in the entrance of the village. What can you say? How can you tell them to feel differently than to feel anger towards the other side? The settler mentality, I think that there are people that really want to live peacefully one next to the other.
Okay. Omer, if leadership did change in the Palestinian world, and you said maybe someday it'll happen, in fact, you suggested you think it's more possible in the near future than most of us think. But if there were a change, a major sea change in Palestinian thinking, and there's a leadership that no longer incited hatred for Jews and Israelis, and said to their people, Israelis are just human beings like anybody else, and we can live side by side with them. If there were that kind of leadership in the Palestinian world, would you be willing to say, then let's share the land? Some of the West Bank will be for them, and we'll have our country too, and there will be two countries living side by side. Would you say that?
I would say that, yeah.
Would you say that?
It's a long discussion. My family, it's 8th generation in Israel. Before 1921, Tarpat, my family was living in Hebron. They would live there for a few hundred years. And they came from Russia because Hebron had dominion. And the reason they left Hebron because of the pogroms in 1929.
They were there?
They've been there.
Wow.
And they were part of the survivors of the pogroms. And most of the Jewish community there were enslaved, and they were part of the only community who survived it. They survived it because their Arab employee kept them in the basement for a few days. And part of my family identity is the connection that, first of all, we have for the country, and our willing to stay here because this is the Jewish state, and it will stay to be the Jewish state. But we're also connecting for the understanding that there is also other people who live there. And actually that's the reason why I'm sitting here, because this Arab employee of my family, that they had the wine store in Hebron, saved their life and gave me the opportunity to serve in the IDF and to do the things I'm doing today. So it's still part of it. The problem why I believe that thing today, and it's very sad for me to say it, it's very hard to see it happen, it's that this Arab employee could be Hasidei Umat Olam. This they could get from Yad Vashem, that they saved Jewish people. It can be in the Holocaust, but it can be in over occasions. But they would not do it. And they would not do it because it's not a proud, it's a shame for saving Jews. So my family is absolutely part of it. And the reason I'm here is because of the connection with Israelis and Arabs, but it's very hard for me to see something like that happening, and I hope it will be changed.
But you're saying for your family it would be hard to imagine giving up some of Judea, Samaria?
I think we are not even talking about giving up. It's just about the idea that there will be a side that will say that they are proud to say that there is a Jewish country in Israel.
In other words, you think it's very unlikely that would happen?
Unlikely to happen. Unfortunately, it's very hard for me to say it right now.
I say it exactly. It's very sad, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because I believe most Israelis, vast majority of Israelis, if it were said, and Israelis don't believe it will be said, but if it ever would be said that the Palestinians wanted to live with Israelis like Canada lives with the United States, the majority of Israelis would say, wonderful, and we'll help them, and We'll live side by side, and if we're living like Canada, we can go anywhere we want. We can go to Hebron. We can go anywhere on the West Bank, Judea, Samaria, because the Palestinians wouldn't stop us. Right now, there are places you can't go if you're Jewish on the West Bank. And there are signs, correct, up telling you, Jews, don't go here. And you could die if you go here. Well, all that would be gone in this messianic scenario. And then you'd be able to go anywhere. And you'd be able to go to Cave of Machpelah. But the likelihood of that at the moment seems to be so remote, correct?
We have some more time ahead of us of mutual work in order for that to happen. If I could relate to Eyal's answer, I said my answer and very quickly. I would give up a part of the land. What's important to understand in my perspective is that it's very simple to say, I won't give an inch of the land. That's the simpler thing to do. Okay, I won't give up any land. They should live. We're the owners of that land, of the state of Israel, from one river to another. But the problem is that we can't expect them to live. They're living in Judea and Samaria as we're living in Tel Aviv, in Yafo, in Haifa, in Rehovot, Rishon LeZion, or whatever city you know. And one of the arguments that we as Israelis are always giving is that they can't expect us to simply vanish. And I say the same thing towards the Israelis that are saying that we own the land. You can't expect them to simply vanish from Judea and Samaria, from Gaza. So giving up land is something that is very difficult to do. But for the sake of peace and our future, our children's and grandchildren's future, we need to give up parts that are less meaningful to us and more meaningful to them in order to maintain a peaceful life together.
Okay. And what you're saying is, if it were ever possible, you'd be willing to make that compromise. And then you also say to me, well, Eyal says it to me, do you agree with Eyal that it's not likely in the foreseeable future?
I think it's more likely to happen than it was 50 years ago, but it's still unlikely to happen in the near future.
Okay. When you come to America, and one of the things you're doing, by the way, is you're trying to raise money for Israel is. Do you also have a chance to talk to Jewish groups, synagogues, or college campuses to describe what you're doing?
We are speaking with as much group as we can.
Okay.
We are getting for communities, for Shabbat synagogues, for everyone that...
Lovely. So this is sort of my last question for you. What's your sense of American Jews? What has surprised you in a good way? And what still, if there anything is, and you will not be hurting anybody's feelings, we just want an honest answer here. What troubles you about the American Jewish experience? I want both of you to answer. You start first. What pleases you? What surprises you in a nice way? And what do you worry about?
I love that every time I come here, I feel at home, and I think that's the great and that's the great thing about the community of the Jewish community in the United States. That every time I land here, I feel that I left Israel, but I'm still in the environment of the Jewish people, and I feel at home. Everyone who hosts me and invite us and speak with us. But I think people, and that's very important to understand, that regardless that Israel is very strong today, we need the community, the Jewish people here to support Israel and to keep doing it. Because the reason Israel is strong today is because the Jewish community in the United States did it for more than 70 years. So that's my main, I'm very worried about it, that we would not forget that regardless Israel is a strong country by themselves today, we still have to make sure that United States, the biggest ally for Israel, will keep being this ally for the next decades and for the future of Israel, to to make sure Israel will keep existing.
It's very lovely. How do you answer the same thing? What has maybe surprised you in a nice way about American Jewry? What concerns you?
Well, I love the amazingly huge advocacy for Israel here in the States. It's incredible. You meet people that are working in law firms, in accounting, in consulting, but when you take the business side part and you sit in front of the guy or the girl, you see the passion for Israel. And that's amazing to meet that 13 hours flight from Israel. That's for a start. And when I'm thinking about the thing that worries me, that's the simplest thing. We want to see them back home. We want to see them in Israel. There are a lot of amazingly talented people here in the States, Jewish amazingly talented people, and we need them. We need them in our ranks. We need them in Israel. We need their skill, their intellect, their force, their energies in Israel to make us a better and stronger state.
Incredible, Omer.
Yotzei min haklal, kol tova hatzlacha.
Thank you so much.
I hope you understand how proud we are
Thank
of
you so much.
We are so proud of you, both of you.
Thank you.
You are examples of what we want our children to be and our grandchildren to be. And you represent Israel in the finest way, and you're two of the loveliest people. And it's just been a joy for me to meet
Thank you
both
very
of
much.
I wish
Thank
you
you.
every success here. What's your website?
Our website is israel-is.org. That's the way we can people find and learn more about it and donate for the project. That will be very helpful for our mission.
Whenever the two of you, or either of you, are near me in New York, I hope you'll come. I could talk to you forever. And at some point, I'd even like to have you on with some other people and have them discuss some of these issues. But you're wonderful, and I thank you so much for making time for us here on JBS. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Eyal Biram, founder and CEO of Israel Is, and Omer Kalo, a captain in the IDF Active Reserve Forces and a participant in the Israel Is program. As always, I invite you to be in touch with me with any thoughts or comments you may have to any of the ideas expressed on this edition of L'Chaim. Please email me. I love to hear from you. And remember, you can take L'Chaim with you anywhere you want to go on podcast, wherever you download your podcast. Download the L'Chaim podcast and listen to it on the treadmill or in the car or as you walk down the street, wherever you want. And you can listen to this edition of L'Chaim as well. And so until the next time, I'm Mark Golub. L'Chaim, my friends, to life.
L'Chaim is a presentation of Jewish education in media.
We would be pleased to send a complimentary DVD of this program to anyone who wishes to support JBS with a tax-deductible gift of $36, double chai or more. Simply visit the JBS website at jbstv.org and click on the Donate button to make a donation by PayPal or your credit card. And please indicate the program for which you would like a DVD. Or you can send your tax-deductible check to JBS, Post Office Box 360, Stamford, Connecticut 06904. Or you can call the JBS Pledge Line at 833-MY-JBS-TV. That's 833-695-2788. And again, please remember to indicate which program you would like to receive with our compliments. We thank you for your kind support.